General Galax's eyes went wide as another human soldier rose from the dead. Galax had put a plasma bolt through the human's skull himself, but impossibly, it stood back up, grabbed its weapon, and opened fire. Galax ducked behind the smoking remains of his dropship. The planet was supposed to be an easy conquest, rich in rare metals, populated by primitive aliens. But the humans resisted like no species Galax had faced in his long career. Their weapons damaged Kersiak ships. Their soldiers took fatal wounds and kept fighting. His battalion was pinned down, taking heavy losses. If Galax failed to secure a foothold, the humans would have time to form a coordinated planetary defense. The Kersiak Empire needed this planet's resources to feed its growing war machine. Galax had to break the human defenses here and now. Somehow. Galax growled into his comm unit. "All forces advance. Burn their primitive huts to ash. Show them the might of the Kersiak Empire." The Kersiak soldiers surged forward, their plasma rifles unleashing searing bolts of energy. Humans scattered before the onslaught, many cut down where they stood. Smoking craters pockmarked the earth, where plasma fire had struck home. Yet as quickly as the humans fell, more emerged from the rubble to take their place. They moved with a fluid coordination, adapting and reacting to the Kersiak's every move. At their head was a grizzled, battle-scarred human that Galax's intelligence reports had identified as Captain Marcus Reynolds. The human's reputation for unconventional tactics was well earned, it seemed. Reynolds barked orders to his troops, directing their fire and movements with the ease of a seasoned commander. Under his guidance, the humans began to turn the tide of the battle. They used the planet's rocky terrain to their advantage, ducking behind boulders and into ravines to evade the Kersiak's plasma fire. Galax watched in disbelief as a group of humans set up a makeshift trap, luring a squad of his soldiers into a narrow canyon before triggering a rock slide that buried the Kersiak alive. Another group of humans ambushed a Kersiak patrol from the ruins of a bombed-out building, catching the soldiers off guard and decimating their numbers. "Impossible," Galax muttered. "These primitives should be cowering before us, not fighting back with such tenacity." He slammed a fist against the side of his dropship, denting the metal. Galax had not risen to the rank of general by accepting defeat. He would crush these humans, no matter the cost. "All units, press the attack," Galax roared into his comm. "We will not be beaten by these savages. The Kersiak Empire will have this planet." The Kersiak soldiers redoubled their efforts, pushing forward with a renewed ferocity. Plasma bolts filled the air as the two sides clashed in a brutal melee. Amidst the chaos, Galax caught a glimpse of Captain Reynolds, the human's face set in grim determination as he rallied his troops. The human met Galax's gaze across the battlefield, and for a moment the two commanders locked eyes, each recognizing the other as a worthy adversary. Then the moment passed, and the battle raged on, the fate of the planet hanging in the balance. The battle raged on, plasma bolts scorching the air and explosions shaking the ground. Amidst the chaos, Commander Thrax approached General Galax, his face grim. "General, I have troubling news," Thrax said, his voice barely audible over the din of combat. "Our scouts have reported that the humans have captured several of our soldiers. They're studying our technology and biology as we speak." Galax's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his plasma rifle. "They dare lay their filthy hands on Kersiak warriors," he growled, his voice dripping with rage. "They will pay for this insolence." The general turned to face his troops, his voice booming across the battlefield. "All units prepare for a full-scale assault on the human stronghold. We will crush their resistance and show them the true might of the Kersiak Empire." The Kersiak soldiers let out a roar of approval, their weapons glowing with renewed energy. They surged forward, their movements more coordinated and precise than before. They had learned from their earlier encounters with the humans, adapting their tactics to counter the defenders' guerrilla warfare. As the Kersiak troops approached the human stronghold, they encountered a maze of fortifications and barricades. The humans had used the remnants of their destroyed buildings to create a formidable defensive perimeter, complete with trenches and gun emplacements. The Kersiak soldiers unleashed a barrage of plasma fire, their weapons tearing through the human defenses like paper. The air was thick with the stench of burning metal and charred flesh as the Kersiak troops breached the stronghold's walls. But the humans were far from defeated. As the Kersiak soldiers poured into the stronghold, they were met with a fierce resistance. The humans fought with a savagery that caught the Kersiak off guard, their primitive weapons proving surprisingly effective in close quarters. Galex watched in disbelief as his soldiers struggled to subdue the human defenders. The Kersiak were stronger, faster, and better equipped, but the humans fought with a tenacity that bordered on madness. They hurled themselves at the Kersiak troops, their eyes blazing with a feral intensity. In the heart of the stronghold, Captain Reynolds rallied his troops, his voice rising above the chaos. "Stand firm, men," he shouted, his rifle spitting fire into the Kersiak ranks. "We will not let these invaders take our home." The humans let out a battle cry, their spirits lifted by their captain's words. They fought with renewed vigor, their bullets and blades finding their marks with deadly precision. Galex found himself locked in combat with a human soldier, the man's face contorted in a snarl of rage. The human was no match for Galex's strength, but he fought with a ferocity that caught the general off guard. Galex struggled to block the human's blows, his armor denting under the force of the man's strikes. As the battle wore on, the Kersiak soldiers began to falter, their ranks thinning under the relentless human assault. Galex could see the fear in his soldiers' eyes, the realization that they had underestimated the human's resolve. Galex found himself face to face with the human captain, Marcus Reynolds. Reynolds held a modified Kersiak plasma rifle, the barrel glowing an ominous red. The human must have scavenged it off a fallen soldier and tinkered with its inner mechanisms. "Surrender now and your death will be quick," Galex bellowed, leveling his own rifle at Reynolds. The human's lips curled into a defiant smirk. "I don't think so, Ugly. This is our home, our land, and we'll fight to the last man to defend it." With those words, Reynolds squeezed the trigger. A pulsing beam of plasma shot from the barrel, barely missing Galex's head. The Kersiak general felt the heat of the beam as it singed his skin. These humans had already figured out their weapons, adapted them for their own use. Galex returned fire, his shot sizzling against the concrete rubble Reynolds used for cover. The human was quick, ducking and weaving between shots. It was like trying to hit a fleeting shadow. All around them the battle raged. Human defenders crouched in the ruins of their city, using the wreckage to their advantage. They popped off shots at the Kersiak soldiers, then disappeared back into the shadows. Galex saw one of his own warriors take a bullet to the head, his helmet shattering like glass. Reynolds dashed to new cover, never stopping in one place for more than a heartbeat. Galex had to admit, the human was a skilled fighter. But it was more than that. The captain fought with a passion, a fire, that Galex had never seen before. This wasn't just a battle to the human. It was personal. "Why do you resist?" Galex shouted over the crack of gunfire. "You only delay the inevitable. The Kersiak Empire will claim this world and 1,000 more." Reynolds popped up from behind an overturned vehicle, his expression hard as stone. "You'll never understand, will you? This is our home, our people. We won't let you enslave us, won't let you strip away our freedom. We'll fight you to the end, no matter the cost." The human's words struck a chord in Galex. He faltered, his finger easing off the trigger. For a moment he saw the battle through Reynolds' eyes, saw his own soldiers not as glorious warriors, but as brutal invaders, conquerors. The Kersiak Empire preached about the superiority of their species, the manifest destiny to rule the stars. But looking at these humans, at the raw courage and determination etched on their faces, Galex felt doubt gnawing at his gut. These humans weren't fighting for glory or riches. They fought for their homes, their families, their very way of life. Could the same be said for him, for any Kersiak soldier? Galex shook off these treacherous thoughts, forcing himself to focus on the battle at hand. He was a Kersiak general, damn it. He had a duty to his species, to his emperor. With a roar of defiance, Galax charged from cover, firing his rifle in rapid bursts. Reynolds met his advance, the human's modified weapon spitting plasma, the air between them filled with scorching light and sizzling ozone. This was a duel between commanders, a clash of wills as much as weapons, soldier against soldier, Kurziak against human. And deep in his heart, Galax began to wonder if his species was fighting for the wrong reasons altogether. Galax's plasma rifle clattered to the ground, the sound echoing across the battlefield. The Kurziak general raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, his voice booming over the chaos. "Kurziak soldiers, stand down! Lower your weapons!" The Kurziak troops hesitated, their eyes darting between Galax and the human defenders. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to comply, their plasma rifles powering down with a whine. Captain Reynolds emerged from cover, his modified Kurziak weapon still trained on Galax. The human's face was a mask of suspicion and disbelief. "What game are you playing, Galax? Is this some kind of trick?" Galax met Reynolds' gaze, his expression weary but resolute. "No trick, human, I am surrendering. I have seen the truth of your words. The Kurziak Empire is wrong. Our conquest, our subjugation of other species, it is a path to ruin." Reynolds approached cautiously, his finger still on the trigger. Around them the battle had stilled, both human and Kurziak soldiers watching the exchange with bated breath. "So why the sudden change of heart?" Reynolds asked, his voice gruff. "You seemed pretty damn committed to wiping us out a few minutes ago." Galax sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I have harbored doubts for a long time, human. Doubts about the Empire's ways, but I buried them, convinced myself that we were in the right, that it was our destiny to rule." He gestured to the ruined city around them, the smoke and rubble. "But this battle has opened my eyes. You humans fight not for glory or power, but for your very survival, your freedom. And I realize now, that is a far nobler cause than anything the Kurziak fight for." Reynolds lowered his weapon slightly, his brow furrowed. "So what now? You just surrender and we all go our separate ways?" Galax shook his head. "No, I have a proposal, an alliance between our species. Together we could challenge the Kurziak Emperor, overthrow his tyrannical regime. We could build a new order in the galaxy, one based on cooperation and mutual respect, not conquest and oppression." The human captain barked a laugh. "You really expect me to trust you? After everything your kind has done? How do I know this isn't some ploy to get us to lower our guard?" Galax met Reynolds' eyes, his gaze unwavering. "I know trust must be earned, human. I do not expect it to come easily or quickly. But I am willing to take the first step." He reached to his belt, unclipping a small device. He tossed it to Reynolds. "This contains all the intelligence I have on Kurziak troop movements, supply lines and weak points. Use it as you see fit." Reynolds caught the device, turning it over in his hands. He looked back at Galax, his expression still guarded, but a flicker of something else in his eyes. Respect, perhaps, or the beginnings of understanding. "I'll consider your proposal," the human said at last. "But I make no promises, and if I suspect for a moment that you're playing us false—" He let the threat hang in the air. Galax nodded solemnly. "I would expect nothing less." He turned to his soldiers, raising his voice. "Kurziak, we will be the Emperor's slaves no longer. Today we forge a new path, side by side with our human brothers and sisters." A murmur rippled through the Kurziak ranks, a mix of shock and tentative hope. They had followed Galax this far. They would follow him still, even into this strange new future. As the smoke began to clear, and the soldiers on both sides lowered their weapons, Galax and Reynolds stood face to face, the seeds of an impossible alliance taking root. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, paved with mistrust and old wounds. But for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for a better tomorrow. The Kurziak general and the human captain clasped arms, a gesture of respect between warriors, a gesture of unity between species. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. You have reached the end of